I would say that there's no state that's got it perfect in the U.S., but Colorado generally is seen as a state that's gotten as close as anybody in doing so because they've been willing to be flexible and learn. And it's certainly been a great state for me to operate out of for the last 7 years.
Mile High Club. Colorado is home to one of the US's longest established cannabis markets. And Chris Day, CEO at the GCNC, the Global Cannabis Network Collective, has been working in the sector right from the get-go. He gives us the D-Lo on this OG market and sheds light on what the rest of the world can learn from the Mile High state.
And we are here on the Lobsterpot podcast. Welcome, everybody. I'm Dave Barton. Well, I call myself the co-founder now because there is another co-founder, which is Jamie Bontheron, and he's here ably flanking me. I say that a few times, dodgy as it might sound, but good to see you. So how you doing? What, we Wednesday today?
Yeah, all good, all good. There's glimpses of sunshine outside, so despite it being September, I'm just about holding on. Yeah,
I kind of went out for a little walk at lunchtime and just felt the sort of, like the rays sort of, it felt like this is the fleeting moment for now autumn. We're just waiting for the inevitable kind of leaf drop and, all of the pumpkin spice goodness that comes with the seasonal change. But I'm trying to find a nice segue from seasonal change into our guest today, and there isn't one, so I'm just going to go with it. Welcome, Chris Day.
Hey, thanks.
Executive Officer of the GCNC, Global Cannabis Network Collective. I've said that about 15 times now, and it's still difficult every time I try and say it. So GCNC is good at this point in time. And we're going to talk about Colorado today because that's where you're based. Sure. But yeah. You're actually in Chicago today. How's Chicago this morning for you? Because Chicago's a beautiful city.
Yeah, no, it's great. I was out this morning, and it's not got that summer heat that you get used to here with the humidity. It's definitely, just as you guys are, sort of transitioning into fall before it turns into the frigid white north later on in the year. So yeah, I'm happy to be here. I was in Nevada last week, Texas, and now Illinois. I'll take the temperatures here above those any day.
Yeah. So what are you up to? You're going to was it Benzinga, the cannabis conference today?
Yeah, that's right. For those who may not be familiar, the Benzinga conference really focuses on capital markets. And funding challenges and problems within the industry. So a lot of investors, a lot of companies seeking capital. And I'm here to observe, learn, and hopefully help drive the industry forward a bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, coming back to, so you're based in Denver, Colorado. You used to work at MG Biz. So tell us about, Colorado is very much the kind of, the sort of OG state when it comes to sort of cannabis and, medical and recreational. So I'm trying to think, when did legalization happen? It was quite a long time ago, wasn't it now?
Yeah, it's been over a decade now. And it's been through a number of iterations, right? So I would say that there's no state that's got it perfect in the U.S., but Colorado generally is seen as a state that's gotten as close as anybody in doing so because they've been willing to be flexible and learn. And it's certainly been a great state for me to operate out of for the last 7 years. I started working in the cannabis space out of Colorado back in the end of 2016. So in this industry, that's quite a while. But, it was nice. They had to legalize cannabis for me to get back to Colorado so I could go back home. I went to school there back in the olden days as well. So
the olden days, yeah. So that's it. So what in terms of, sort of fast forward today, and what's kind of legal in Colorado right now? Is it, really this kind of cannabis sort of mecca that it's said to be? I've never been. I've been to a lot of places in the US, never been to Colorado, but so is it as good as they say it is? Does it live up to the hype?
I think I think it does. You have to come and visit for yourself. To say you're in the cannabis industry and not been here, Dave, is a bit of a stretch.
I know. But, you know, we'll sort that out. Yeah.
Yeah. The product variety, the brands, the diversity, the different dispensary approaches. It's a great market. You know, the whole state is, in the ballpark of about 6 million people. So it's a market that you can still have enough activity to predict trends and see how things are going. It started as a medicinal market, very quickly shifted into an adult use market with a medicinal component. So I think, when people come, they get a chance to see everything they would probably have heard about or expected, but in a pretty controlled fashion.
That's it. I mean, you talk about, what was the sort of gap between sort of medical and then adult use sort of coming online?
Well, I think the trend in Colorado is the same trend that we see everywhere, right? The first, it's just a matter of how long it takes. Almost always when approval happens, it happens with a very specific set of medicinal issues. And then when you get pain included and pain management included in the medicinal project, you're like 2 seconds away from just saying, okay, so adult use, because we all have pain at some time or another. And that was very much the trend in Colorado, although it was accelerated there versus what most markets take. But you see that happen everywhere. I would argue that's the path that most European countries are on too. So it may not feel like it, but it's the trend.
No, but I think that's interesting, particularly when we talk about Germany and Switzerland, and even in the UK. I mean, we don't have a huge medical market. I mean, we're 10 times bigger than Colorado from a kind of population perspective, and we've got 16,000 patients. So you do the math. It's not that many if we're percentages concerned, but at the same time, it's almost like that's hope that something else will happen. But I mean, by the same token, it was quite interesting. I mean, I think I shared that news article with you about medical marijuana sales, sort of dipping in Colorado, and it just got me thinking. Well, once you've got an adult use market, how does the medical market sort of present itself? How does it kind of coexist? I mean, it's a case of you put it in one box and it's in a fancy kind of like, floral brand sort of talking about, lifestyle. And then you kind of on the other shelf where you've got the kind of medical stuff, it could be the exact same product, but in a kind of white sort of, pill box. I mean, is it that distinct or is that simple or?
It's actually, yeah. So I think it is possible for a medicinal market to coexist with an adult use market. But I think having spent a fair amount of time in the UK and the EU, I think most folks would be surprised to see how much it is just the same products. The real issue in most US markets where there are both is taxation. It's not product differentiation, right? So if you have your medical card, really you're saving money on the products. Your taxes are slightly lower. It has very little to do with product differentiation because many of the dispensaries are both adult use and medicinal. There are exceptions. There are some that really do try to be medicinal only, but those numbers are decreasing. And if you don't have product differentiation and you don't have doctors actively prescribing, so it really is a self-medication approach, which is what's happening in Colorado and all the other states. If it's just monetary, it saves yourself the hassle from going and getting the card and giving the government all of your information and all of that. And to save a couple of bucks, most people are not going to do it. And so that's why that's sort of going to be the demise, I think, of that model. Yeah. We'll see if they change. Yeah.
So it's not enough for a price differential for it to be like, okay, well, I'll kind of go through the bureaucracy, get the medical card, and then sort of save a whole bunch on product. It's just like, I don't need the hassle. I don't want the government having my data necessarily. I'll just go and buy adult use kind of cannabis, for want of a better term.
Yeah, because it's the same product.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. No, you're right. It's just amazing to me. I just find it, again, this is one of my, I don't say bugbears. It's not even like, it's a concern. It's something that, this idea that you've got, how do you present something equal parts medical, equal parts recreational? I mean, arguably, the two are of the same ilk, they come from the same place, but when presenting
they shouldn't be the same product. They just shouldn't be the same product. I mean, if you look at other in my opinion, right? If you look at other markets around the world, which U.S. markets rarely do, but if you did, you see products that are formulated specifically for certain ailments, just like you get other medicines, through your doctor. And I am really happy having the adult use market in the United States. I think it's critical that globally we drop the stigma and start having rational discussions about full legalization in all of these markets. But the products should be different. You don't go to a liquor store and say that's the same thing as buying NyQuil. Like, it's a different product. It's a different formulation, right? So it's going to take time to mature, but this is what happens when you have a federal government that fails to acknowledge reality. And so you create all of these different models across multiple states.
No, but I think I'm in agreement with you there. Sorry, Jamie.
No, I think it's really interesting with cannabis is in a weird space if you have rec and med at the same time for obvious reasons. But I think as research into cannabis develops and, more is learned about the plant, potentially more products can be created that have a far more, pointed effect, something that they're really designed for and built for. But the interesting thing is that typically if you have a medical market, you don't normally have a legal market. A recreational market. Like, I'm not going to the shop and buying paracetamol because it's easier for me to do it than I can go and get my doctor. Do you know what I mean? There isn't that division. So normally where medicines or products would be backed by sort of big pharma money, in this case, they're not going to be in probably the same way. They're more likely to be backed by sort of commercial groups who are just doing it for the recreational market. So you think, well, we're going to get a load of study and interest in the plant and what it can do, but do you think it's likely or fair to say that that's more likely going to be picked up by the rec market anyway, as opposed to the medical market? I find it really difficult to understand how it could develop beyond what it is,
I think we have to look at things like holistic medicine, health and wellness products, right? Because what you're saying about the separation of a pharmaceutical from a quote unquote adult use and saying there is none is actually not completely true when you look through the filter of, but I can go to, in Colorado, a natural grocers and purchase, holistic formulations that do treat many of the same things that doctors give me prescriptions to treat. And I will generally go to the health food store or the organic product store and buy them there if I know that they're going to work. So I think cannabis, while it does have in some cases the psychoactive effect, right? That's not wholly distinct from that delineation that exists within medicine and pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose it somehow positions itself or finds itself in a position where it isn't treated as, a herbal remedy, whereas really that's kind of what it is. But it's because it has the psychoactive effect and good and bad stigma around it that that probably separate it, because there aren't other products. You know, you're not going to the show, go and get some lavender and have a really good weekend. It's like, it's not quite.
I don't know.
Exactly. You're right. You're absolutely right. It is a herbal remedy. It does form part of effective holistic medicine, but it's somehow in its own space. And it's interesting to think how that's going to be carved out in the future. I don't know. You know, it's just interesting to speculate and think about, I think.
I think if we had much more time than we probably have today, we could mind map that sucker out and figure out, you know, 3 or 4 likely routes that's going to go down based on consumer behavior and the history. I do think that we often forget that, you know, 200 years ago, this was a plant that was very much integrated into daily life, right? So we've created all these very bizarre, fake kind of barriers around it and how it's used, hemp and cannabis included. So, you know, humans have successfully navigated this in the past. It's the monetary and economic effect that has really played along with it now in coordination with politics. But
it's interesting. It's like, you know, when you talk about going to a health food store, I think the more mature market, I mean, this is just me speculating, feel free to disagree. The more mature market gets, the more we think about less as a product about, you know, getting high and more about, okay, how can we incorporate this or elements of this to feel better in our day-to-day lives? And that's just the kind of health play that, or health and wellness play that more and more people are sort of waking up to now. It certainly feels that way. And maybe, do you feel like cannabis's role is changing in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, it's a statistical fact, right? That the larger audience, the fastest growing audiences right now are in the United States anyway, are women between the ages of 35 and 55, give or take, and the elderly at 65 plus. That's not because they're trying to go achieve the stereotypical high that everybody's trying to say is what everybody's doing. So who are opposing, you know, further legalization efforts. So it's just not reality. The reality is very much that while using it as a psychoactive product recreationally is a large part of the market, it is far from the fastest growing part of the market.
See, one of the things you mentioned to me, well, last time we spoke, was this idea of, you know, you're seeing more and more like ketamine clinics and opening up in Colorado. And that was something, I mean, I've only just started to sort of figure out more and more about sort of psychedelics and things like that. Probably on the back of that lovely Netflix series that everyone in the whole world has watched. But again, it's fascinating to think that, you know, those sort of things, you know, the idea of something psychoactive actually being considered as a treatment, but, you know, not just in kind of like, you know, medicine person sort of terms of like the shaman, you know, it's happening at downtown Denver, right? And that feels like a massive, does that feel like a massive shift from the last 10 years in terms of cannabis into something else? And I mean, it feels a million years away here.
Yeah, you know? No, it's, I think while your statement is true, the piece that I think most people found most interesting, right, was the decriminalization of psilocybin or magic mushrooms in the city of Denver. So that's a pretty small geography, by the way, but it does show an attitudinal shift around psychedelics. I think the adoption of the conversation around psychedelics in general and the velocity of that conversation is much faster because of all the heavy lifting that people in the cannabis space have done, you know, over the last 20, 30 years. It's also true that the stigma that was created by the war on drugs around cannabis is much, much greater than psychedelics. And so when you can go in and talk to people about, hey, we're helping people with PTSD, we're helping people with depression, this is, there is verifiable data that shows this works. It fits very well into the ongoing discussion globally that's being had around mental health, right? Yeah. And so all of that syncs up. I don't think I've been to a cannabis conference other than perhaps the one I'm at right now, because it's really focused on cannabis capital markets, where psychedelics hasn't been a track, where there hasn't been numerous conversations about where do these different types of products and treatments intersect. There's still there's no money in that at the moment. It's really research focused, and I think that's where it should be, because the way in which those products can help people is tremendous, and we need to champion those kinds of discussions. If we can address the mental health problems using these products from mostly plants, in the case of psilocybin, I mean, how great is that? It just sort of shows how armed we are by the planet in ways that people often have forgotten.
No, 100%. And I think, again, like you say, the heavy lifting's been kind of done by cannabis, but again, almost that, again, transpose what you're saying about medical cannabis in the UK. It's that kind of feeling, is that we need people to come out and say, hey, this works for me. This is how, having those advocates and being kind of more vocal about it. But I mean, again, to kind of focus on your kind of global perspective, and I know that's kind of what you've touched on a couple of times, and that's what you guys are doing at GCNC. You're kind of uniting people across the world working in this space. But what do you think different countries can kind of learn specifically from how Colorado's done things, good and bad? And what,
I mean, I think Colorado shows a lot of great trend data and how people behave, right? It shows when you legalize, the world's not going to fall apart. When you legalize, people will benefit. There will be some people who abuse products, but they already abuse products. And so now you have a framework within which you can operate and track. If you keep taxes lower, it kills off the black market and allows the legal market to rise. In Colorado, they are raising taxes. That's not great. It's a bad idea, because you've got a system that works, but politicians get greedy. So my hope is we continue to show in Colorado that changing in response to the market and creating a place where business and government can work together makes a lot of sense. I've had a number of groups from South American countries fly in to see how does this hybrid market work. I know there's been a number of Europeans who have come over, same kind of thing, trying to learn how this market works. If you look at Colorado versus California versus New York, for example, I think you can learn a lot of really, really good stuff for the most part out of Colorado, and you can go to the other states to see how to screw it up.
Sounds like a true Coloradan.
I'm a little biased, but the business results are also very real. I am genuinely hoping that they don't screw it up, because we have learned a lot. And this notion that somehow cannabis doesn't adhere to normal economic laws is a fallacy. And so, we need to use those learnings, not only from cannabis, but from business and economics in general.
I think it's interesting that when you speak to people, now fair enough, they're businesses or they're involved in the industry, so they have a vested interest. I think the thing that people only seem to really have a problem with is taxation. And I think that is almost the really key learning point, not from a financial economic perspective, but from perhaps a moral or a patient or people care perspective, in that, as you say, when it does happen, it doesn't just fall apart. You're 10 or however many years into the journey of having a legal market, medical and recreational. And the big problem is taxation. It's not, abuse. It's not theft. It's not, dangerous products. It turns out that it actually works quite a lot like every other industry.
It does. And I mean, quite frankly, the largest problem with with theft, that's not driven at the state level. That's driven by the federal level, which requires all of this screwed up approach to banking, right? That keeps way more cash in a facility than there should be, that doesn't allow you to manage safety the way you should be. Not for the plant. That is locked down, right? It's these other parts of transporting money. I don't know if this is still true. I would assume it is, but several years ago, I heard a talk given by one of the Colorado-based representatives of the Internal Revenue Service, and they had a special office set up for the cannabis businesses to show up with their cash payments at the IRS. So it's not federally legal, but we're sure as hell happy to take your money taxed at 100%. So it's a bit of, that is what creates black markets. That is what creates theft positions. Black markets come in when products get priced too high and people still need their medicine or still want their adult use products. So, that is not going to change. No. It's the same issues in every state and every country, I think.
Exactly. I would say, just to kind of wrap things up, as you're kind of looking ahead, I'm not going to ask you about federal legalization and when you think it is, because that's a crazy thing. But
Nobody knows.
Other markets? Nobody knows. Nobody knows that. In terms of other markets you're kind of excited by, and you see that there's, obviously you've got Germany, you've got Thailand. What other markets you're kind of looking at globally? There's something happening there that's going to really make a difference quite soon, or
I think those countries are interesting. Of course, I'm particularly intrigued by what is, and I wouldn't say this is excitement. It is intriguing to see what happens in Mexico. That's a market that if they push through what they're supposed to push through, and we've been saying that for 2 years, they would quickly become one of the largest markets in the world and a real hub for connectivity between North and South America. That would be huge. What's going on in Germany, I also find intriguing. What I find exciting is what happens after Germany. Right? Because the German market, there's going to be a lot of blood in the water. I mean, everybody's going in there. There's going to be a lot of failure and there will be some success. In the end, consumers will win. But the business is, there's going to be a lot of losers there. And so the question is, though, how does that change the face of the European continent? Because it will. And once the European continent changes, that kicks in a lot more opportunity for Africa. It kicks in a lot more opportunity for research that's been done in the Middle East. That will change the world. So I do find Germany to be sort of a rather large domino in what I'm excited about coming over the next 5 to 10 years.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, that's really great insight, and really thank you for coming on, Chris. And we'll look forward to catching up with you again really soon. And, do we mention our partnership? I think we can at this point.
I think we can. I think we should tease it.
I think we can. Yeah, we'll tease it.
Yeah.
A partnership.
So,
podcasting thing.
Yes, there is more to come around the global market discussion between the Global Cannabis Network Collective and Thermador. I am genuinely excited about that as well. So it's going to be fun. Yeah,
that's it. We need to talk. We compare notes to MJ BizCon at some point as well for that kind of stuff. But watch this space, everyone. But no, thank you again, Chris. Have a successful trip in Chicago. Enjoy the conference, and we shall speak soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks, guys.